Dear fellow authors and illustrator, I'm glad to see you this afternoon in Jakarta and this morning in Norwich. I am Tyas, and I'll be hosting this podcast. We're going to say this talking with the residents from Norwich. We have Amanda and Pai here. Can you wave to the camera, girls? And we also have Dee and Andina from Jakarta. Wave to the camera. All right. Before we begin, I'm going to read the short biographies of all the residents. I'm going to start from Amanda. Amanda Addison is an award-winning author listed for prizes in both adult and children fiction. Her short stories, The English Way, was selected to represent the UK in a Pan-European Award. Boundless Sky, Amanda's debut picture book, was listed for the Clip Carnage and Kate Greenaway Medal. Most recently, her upcoming of age novel, Where You Are Really From, publishing with Neem Tree Press in early 2024, was listed for Searchlight Writing Novel Opening Award. For your information, I have read Boundless Sky the other day. It's a very beautiful story, Amanda. Thank you for writing it. Next, I'm going to read Noor Hadi's bio. Noor Hadi is a children's books author and has published 20 children's books. Over the years, 4 of his books have been translated into English, and his book entitled 25 Prophets and Apostles was ranked as a bestseller in the country. In 2019, he was invited to the Asian Publisher Fellowship Program in Seoul, South Korea, discussing children's book and future reading in the digital age with the other delegation from Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, etc. His 2 recent self-published books entitled Poetry Juice and Who Farted received a positive response by children and parents in Indonesia. Those 2 books are favorite too in my house. Everybody cannot stop reading Poetry Juice and Who Farted. Hi, Mas Adi. Nice to see you today.
Hello.
I'm going to move to Pai now. Hsuan Pai, am I pronounce your name? Pronounce it right?
Hsuan Pai.
Hsuan. Okay.
That's okay. It's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is a scientist with a background in a molecular plant and microbial biology. She spent a decade working in a plant virus lab at Academia Sinica in Taiwan before becoming a technician at the Sainsbury Laboratory. At her job, she assists the team in deciphering plant immune networks. Outside the academia, Hsuan is passionate about drawing and handcrafting, often drawing inspiration from how the living things work. Since moving to Norwich in 2020, she has found great inspiration in the city history and natural beauty. Combining her love for science and illustration, she's interested in using illustration to communicate scientific concepts. I have met a children's books creator who studied forestry and pharmacy, but this is the first time I met a scientist, so I'm so glad to meet you. That's just cool. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to move to Andina. Andina Subarja is a children's book author and illustrator. She lives in Jakarta and has been a children's book illustrator from 2013, working along with multiple publishers and children's organizations. Her published picture book as author-illustrator are Sloth Surprise and Rolling. In her spare time, she also writes children's short stories and poems. Her unpublished picture book, Music, was included in the Unpublished Picture Books Showcase 2022 by The Pictures. Hi, Andina.
Hi.
Gliding or Rolling is also one of the favorite books in my house, so I'm glad to have you here today. Before we start, I'd like to inform that today we are going to discuss about the residency. This is the first virtual residency hosted by Jakarta City of Literature and Norwich City of Literature, funded by British Council. And we'd like to we'd like to talk about how this program going and how the author and the illustrator learn and gain knowledge from this program. Before I start with my question, the team from Norwich would start their presentation. Amanda, please.
So here's our book, and we're going to read from Rainbow Round the Park, which was a collaborative effort between Pi and myself, because we found out on our first meeting we're both quite obsessed with Chapelfield Gardens in Norwich, so we used that as a setting for our story. So we're going to read it to you now.
So Rainbow is the book that you work for this project?
Yeah, Rainbow Round the Park.
Rainbow Around the Park. Okay. Oh, that's lovely. Okay, please start.
Rainbow Round the Park, Amanda Addison, and illustrated by Hsuan Pai. This is the colorful story of Amelia's journey to and from the park. As the seasons turn, people come and go. But why are they stopping to share their beautiful favorite? A joyful celebration of a green space in the city, upcycling, and how we can share our resources from around the world to create something beautiful for everyone.
Amelia and Mum enter the park. A watery sun warms their faces. Amelia runs past frosty flower beds towards the bandstand. They meet Rachel and her mum. The girls skate over frozen puddles. Look, a rainbow in the ice, says Amelia. Leftover fabric for you, says Rachel's mum. From my sister's bat mitzvah party dress, says Rachel. The city hall clock strikes. Off to school they go. Homeward bound with shopping bags, bicycle bells ring round the park. Beamer and his dad screech to a halt. Batik, a shirt from Jakarta for you, says Beamer's dad. Too small for me now, says Beamer, running to the roundabout. Round and round Amelia and Beamer ride. Overhead starlings fly high, circling the indigo sky. Morning, and Joachim cycles past peeping bluebells. He has bread and delicious tarts on his cart. Hola, a tablecloth for you, too ragged to use, he says. Amelia breathes in the aroma of fresh buns and follows it to the cafe. Saturday afternoon, past the old city walls and through the park Amelia and Dad go. Daffodils stand in line, smiling sunny faces. People are dressed in yellow and green, matching shirts and hats and scarves. Uncle Jake, shouts Amelia. He wraps a canary scarf around her. For your first football match. And for you, says Uncle Jake, handing Dad his old football shirts. Off to the match they go. Summer is coming in a flash of flowers, lacy blossom and borders. Amelia and Irina skip through the tall dandelion grass. From last Christmas nutcracker, says Irina's mum, handing over a sparkly orange costume. Out through the sunflower gates, off to ballet class they twirl. It's hot and people sit on benches. They eat strawberries and ice cream. Butterflies flutter, bees buzz, red roses scent the air. Amelia and Nazreen cartwheel barefoot on the grass. Sorry red ribbons, says Nazreen's mum. Amelia strokes the swirly, shimmering shapes. A gift from India, says Nazreen. The fun fair comes to the park, a kaleidoscope of lights against the nighttime sky. Off to ride round and round on the carousel ponies, Amelia and her friends go. Summer is ending. Trees are heavy with dazzling leaves. Chestnuts fall. Mum and Dad sit and sew. Amelia and Uncle Jake play on the golden grass. What are you making? Asks Amelia. Top secret, says Mum. You'll find out soon enough, smiles Dad. Autumn comes, a special day at the park. Everyone brings a picnic to say, "Happy birthday, Amelia." Music from the bandstand fills the air. But where is Mum? Mum hurries across the grass. She rolls out a big rug. "All the colours of the rainbow," gasps Amelia. Sunshine wraps around the park. Swallows soar against a bright blue sky, and underfoot, Amelia's beautiful patchwork rug has room for everyone.
That's the end of the story. So here's the picnic scene of the book. So I think it's the most important and most interesting image. And here we have different foods. So in the story, we are collecting different textiles and made into this rainbow rug. But also Amanda designed like different food around the world from different families. So I try to include them in the picture. So I hope you can tell there are like Indian snacks and pomegranate juice, and also the fried noodles from Indonesia and sandwich from Norwich.
Oh, and the batik shirt from Indonesia.
Yes.
So it was a linking of food and fabric, I think, plus the natural world, and trying to draw these three things together in a storyline.
I think next we can share some creative process during these projects. So Amanda, would you like to talk about how you initiate the idea? Think about the story?
Yeah. When I applied for the residency, I had a very vague idea of a story called Fantastic Threads. And then we went through lots of possible title ideas, and titles I think are the hardest bit. Somebody said weave a rainbow, and then I thought, well, they're not actually weaving it, they're sewing it. And then it was Pi who came up with the title with all these different suggestions. She thought of Rainbow Round the Park. So it was a really nice collaboration because Pi came up with the title. And then when I was thinking about the rug, rather than describing it, I made this little collage of different patterned fabrics and flowers from the different seasons, which Pi then took into the illustration. So we kind of swapped roles on that.
Yeah. I think we swap roles in many different points. I also got a lot of input from Amanda for the illustration. Very nice.
That's a beautiful patchwork. I'm sorry, perhaps I missed this. Did you saw this, Amanda? Did you really make that? Is this yours?
Stop sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. I do wish you have the recipes for all the food you mentioned in the book.
It's a collage. I didn't sew it. I collaged papers together.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty.
And yeah, it's like sometimes it's easier to do the image rather than keep trying to explain what was in my head. And before I started as a writer, I trained in illustration, but I don't really do much now. But it was a little chance to go back to it.
That's lovely. I heard that the book would be published as an ebook by the end of this program. Is that correct? That we can. I read it somewhere that we can actually see it online. That would be lovely.
Online on the activity website.
Yeah, and then I think as we get towards the end of things, we might speak and see if there's some publishers that would be interested. So yeah, in terms of a print book, that's sort of down the line.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Is there anything you would like to tell us about this program, or should we talk more during the interviews?
Developing process for this.
Yeah.
for the illustration. So I think for my part, I actually started from thinking about a project, so doing an illustration for Jakarta. So at that time, I was wondering to do a map of Jakarta, and I can have like different architecture of foods in Jakarta. And I also thinking about making a brochure, just introducing Jakarta and also combine the textile from Jakarta at the back. Because I've never been to Jakarta, which is a shame, but I take a look of like on YouTube, there are lots of walk around videos, and I really draw into the lives in Jakarta. And I really like the like street vendors, and like there are different plants. I think it's a city of a lot of green spaces. So I really like it, and I started some drawings about Jakarta. But then next, I read Amanda's project and saw her story as we just read it. You know, it's a story around Chapelfield Garden. It's at the city center of Norwich. And previously I have a project, so I also draw Chapelfield Garden. So I think it's really interesting to find we have some common interests about Norwich and about the projects. So I was wondering maybe I can cooperate with Amanda for the projects. So I think as Amanda mentioned, she also do some illustrations. I think she has like lots of notes about illustrations in her text. So by reading her text and her notes in the file, I already have some images bubbling in my mind. So like the first part of the story, she has some notes about like there are violet or indigo flowers growing in the park, and the rest of the background is a bit just monochrome. So I really started to have the image in my mind. And also she has like nice design of the characters. I even mentioned their background and what they are doing, their interests and their hobbies or their cultural backgrounds. So I think the first thing I did for the illustration is I do a little bit research about the characters.
And I like the football, having the yellow and green for Norwich City. We thought that was quite fun to bring in, to kind of speak in little bits about the city into the storyline.
And about the final layouts, it's actually also undergo like different stages and changes. So at first I was thinking just do one image, maybe a bird's eye view of the park. So you see the stands like at the center, but with different rainbow colors, maybe different plants and flowers. And at the background, we see the city of Norwich, and we have people, the characters from different families just surrounding the image. And then I think, because by reading the story, I think the essence of the story is really the daily lives, and the characters go through the seasons and like different activities and the interactions between the different like friends and the main character, Amelia. So I think it's really, we really need to like show these images in the book. So we also think about making a real book, like a complete book. And we're also thinking about this concertina format of the book. But then because giving the short time of these projects is kind of impossible to finish the whole book. So we then change back to just one image, but this time we incorporate the storyline and the changes of the season, and see the journey of Amelia collecting different favorites through the story. And but we have the focus of the picnic, so at the bottom panel. So here I think this project I really have a lot of discussion and input from Amanda. So like the color scheme. So at first I was thinking the characters in a limited color palette, but she mentioned maybe you can still have like 4 colors for the picnic. And also you can see from the upper image, at that time I was thinking the rainbow rock is like put together different colors, but then Amanda came up with the idea of doing of the collage, like from of different colors and also incorporating different plants. And also for the cover image, because Amanda has a previous work, and the book cover, you can see the text is made from like fabric. So I think we also incorporate into our cover image. So we have the rainbow kind of, it's a patchwork and it's kind of textile. And also at first I only have the cover image, just the bandstand and just some plants. So it's quite static. So Amanda mentioned we can have the characters and also the band playing in the bandstand, flying on the sky. So bring some activities and vibe to the image. So I think it's really nice output after these discussions. And towards the final artwork, I try to combine analog materials. So I have like pencil drawings and then put together digitally. And also for the rainbow rug, because it's a bit difficult for me to find different textiles, but I made like those patterns using watercolors and colored pencils. And then I do a digital collage in computer, yeah. So that's the final format of our book.
That's lovely. Putting all together the cultures, the fabrics, and also combine them all into the changes of season. The season change is always interesting for us in Indonesia because we only have 2 seasons, rainy season and dry season. So that's just lovely. Thank you, Amanda and Pai, for sharing your work. I'm going to move to Hadi and Andina at the moment, and we're going to talk more later during the question and answer. Okay, are you ready to present yours, guys?
Oke, jadi di program residensi kali ini saya dan Mbak Andina menulis cerita tentang persahabatan antara patung dan angin. Dan untuk proses kreatif saya sendiri, saya menggunakan format pantun dalam cerita. Jadi saya bisa sebut sebagai cerita pantun atau pantun story. Pantun adalah puisi tradisional Indonesia yang memiliki 4 baris atau biasa disebut sebagai quatrain, yang di masing-masing baris tersebut terdapat persamaan suku kata gitu, silabel. Jadi bukan hanya rima, tapi juga suku katanya diperlihatkan. Nah, di buku ini saya memadukan antara cerita dan puisi, yang mungkin di Indonesia itu masih jarang sekali ada cerita dalam bentuknya pantun. Dan ciri khas pantun itu dalam 4 baris, 2 baris pertama itu sampiran atau biasa disebut sebagai jembatan untuk menuju isi, dan 2 baris berikutnya adalah isi yang dimaksud dari pantun tersebut. Nah, cerita yang saya sampaikan di sini, The Statue and the Wind, patung dan angin, saya sampaikan lewat cerita dan pantun. Untuk proses ilustrasinya sendiri mungkin bisa dari Mbak Andina.
Okay.
Mungkin segitu aja dulu dari saya, Mbak Tyas. Habis itu nanti lanjut ke proses ilustrasi.
Okay, so Hadi's stories is about the friendship between a statue and the wind, but he's writing it in the verse. So it's, can we call it verse picture book? Because each page is going to have it's like one poem, but it's a traditional poem from Indonesia. Not only the poem has rhymes at the end of each sentence, but it also have similar number of syllables. So it's something like haiku, I think, in from Japan. So yeah, Andina will continue to tell us about the creative process of illustrating this book. Please, Andina.
From the draft story and the text Mr. Hadi made, I started on the rough sketches and collecting references, just to help me imagining what the statue gonna look like. Is it going to be an existing or non-existing statue? Where is it gonna be and what pose, etc. Initially, I thought of making just 2 illustrations, but the more I read the story, the more intrigued I get. The big theme is stories of city, but it's also about friendship and journey. And during the study, I realized that I can also add more layer to the story with illustration. So the statue will have a small story arc. The journey will help him discover something about himself at the end. So I ended up making illustration and storyboard. Yeah.
Baca.
Udah. So now we want to read from the dummy book that we made.
Yeah.
Are you going to read the text in Indonesian or in English?
Yes, Mr. Hadi will
Bahasa Indonesia.
in bahasa Indonesia, and the text in the screen is English.
Patung dan angin. Langsung.
Boleh next.
Pagi yang cerah di dalam taman. Ada suara kicauan burung. Inilah kisah persahabatan, kisah antara angin dan patung. Di atas gunung bulan purnama, terang serupa intan permata. Angin dan patung kerap bersama, bertukar sapa dan bercerita. Oh duhai patung, teman karibku, diriku punya satu cerita. Maukah kamu dengarkan aku, dirimu pasti menyukainya. Oh duhai angin yang kerap pergi, namun selalu datang kembali. Kisah-kisahmu memang kutunggu, hari ke hari, waktu ke waktu. Selembar daun terlihat basah, diguyur hujan di malam buta. Lalu angin pun mulai berkisah tentang jalanan dan kota-kota. Angin, oh angin, teman baikku, kisah-kisahmu membuat iri. Aku hanyalah patung yang kaku, tak pernah pergi setiap hari. Patung, oh patung, jangan begitu, bukan maksudku membuat iri. Ceritakanlah hanya untukku yang kau temui setiap hari. Pohon yang rimbun di tengah kota, tegak berdiri tak tergoyahkan. Lalu patung pun mulai cerita perihal hari yang membosankan. Perahu dayung, perahu layar, ombak menyundul lalu menghilang. Angin pun langsung tersenyum lebar, di benak muncul ide cemerlang. Jembatan layang, jembatan gantung, orang menyeberang setiap hari. Angin pun terbang membawa patung, melayang-layang ke luar negeri. Tanah yang subur tidak bertuan, sangatlah indah dipandang mata. Patung meluncur di atas awan, lalu merendah di atas kota. Dingin mengepung di padang salju, panas-panasan di padang pasir. Angin dan patung terus melaju, petualangan belum berakhir. Mereka terbang sambil bernyanyi, lalu menari sesuka hati. Kota yang riang, kota yang sunyi, kota yang rapih, indah berseri. Lihatlah itu, patung berseru. Ada festival di tengah jalan. Lihatlah itu, angin berseru. Ada karnaval yang menakjubkan. Pohon cemara di tepi kali, di sana ada binatang buas. Patung gembira senang sekali. Lalu dunia, lihat dunia yang sangat luas. Terima kasih angin yang baik, mengajak terbang dan bertualang. Lihatlah langit, hujan merintik. Sudah saatnya kembali pulang. Baiklah patung, kita kembali ke tempat asal kamu berdiri. Semoga kamu merasa senang, lalu bosanmu segera hilang. Ada harapan, ada peluang, tak perlu bingung, terus berjuang. Di perjalanan menuju pulang, angin dan patung bernyanyi riang. Pagi yang cerah di dalam taman, ada belalang santap tanaman. Inilah kisah persahabatan, tak akan hilang sepanjang zaman. Oke, satu lagi, nah iya. Selesai.
Okay, I can see that you're doing a hard work of trying to translate the manuscript also in rhymes in English. That's, I believe that's a hard work. Mas Hadi and Andina, do you want to share something about your book or?
Tadi udah sih di awal.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about this during the question and answers. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to start asking questions. The first one is for Amanda and Mas Hadi. What motivated you to join this residency? First, I think I'll have Amanda to answer first.
Okay. It's quite unusual to see a residency for writing for children. Most residencies seem to be for writing adult fiction. So that, alongside the fact that I also work, I lecture in art and writing. So I couldn't actually go away over that time. So it seemed ideal to have that collaboration with people, because writings are really, it's quite a solitary occupation, and I think you get better ideas when you collaborate. And I'm a really keen traveller, so I wanted to know more about Indonesia. So for that reason as well, it seems that it could kind of spark ideas and sort of help motivate me, because it gives a deadline. We had to present something, so it makes you think differently, creatively, rather than just working at a sort of different sort of pitch, really. Yeah.
If so you never been to Indonesia before?
No, I haven't been to Indonesia. I spent time in the past in Amsterdam, and we had friends there whose parents had come from Indonesia. There's a big community, but that's as much as I sort of knew about Indonesia.
I hope that both you and Pai would have a chance in the future to visit us in Indonesia, yeah, and eat the real mie goreng. Okay, Mas Hadi, can you share to us what motivated you to join this residency?
Ya, salah satu motivasi saya adalah ingin merasakan bagaimana sih rasanya residensi itu gitu, Mbak. Terus selain itu saya juga ingin meningkatkan pemahaman saya tentang bagaimana sih caranya membuat cerita anak. Terus lebih luasnya lagi bagaimana sih caranya menerbitkan buku anak gitu. Terus selain itu juga saya ingin memiliki pengalaman untuk berinteraksi dengan orang-orang di Norwich gitu, pada khususnya ingin tahu bagaimana mereka membuat sebuah buku, bagaimana mereka membuat sebuah cerita untuk anak gitu kan. Itu sih motivasi saya, ingin berbagi pengalaman gitu bersama teman-teman yang di Norwich.
Okay, so Hadi joined this residency because he'd like to share and also to learn from the resident from Norwich about how to make children's stories and about children books ecosystem, and also how to publish children books. Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to ask Pai and Andina, what do you expect to achieve by the end of this program, and have you achieved it? Can I start from Andina? Yeah.
This is more than I expected, to be honest. I thought I was going to make a piece, like maybe with a bit of concept or maybe a story, a small story, but I ended up collaborating with a very interesting story from the author, and I get a lot of inspiration, and yeah, a dummy book. So. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess deadlines work very well for everybody, yeah? I mean, in a way that you got post and not only post, but I hear during the session, you got assistance from either NCW or Jakarta City of Literature to create your own book. That's great. What about you, Pai?
I think it's a bit similar to Andina. So as you can see from my slides, I was thinking to do an image about Jakarta, but I end up doing a story about Norwich. But it's nice to have the cooperation, and this is also my first time cooperating with the writer, so I think I learned a lot.
Okay. Now, what is the most interesting thing that you learned from this program? You see that this is the first residency program held by Jakarta and Norwich. So we'd like to know more about your experience and what you have learned from this program. Can I start with Amanda first?
I think we kind of all learned lots from each other. And I think what's been really good is that we've been able to share ideas and collaborate in a way you don't normally get to do as a writer. But also learning about the publishing industry across the two cities and the similarities and differences. So we've got lots of insights from the libraries. I really remember when we had the librarian session, how you have your beautiful library and you were saying people go in to keep cool. And then in our library in the winter, we've had a lot of people would go in there warm. So there's similarities, but also these kind of opposites going on. So just little things about the city that you wouldn't know otherwise. And also how we kind of reflected each other's city a little bit in the storylines, I think. That's been great. So there's been quite a lot of freedom to create with no fixed result, even though interestingly we've all pushed through to try and make a book. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Pai?
Yeah, I think I really like we share the what we think about both cities. So I remember the first session we start introducing about our cities, and also as I mentioned, I haven't been to Jakarta before, so I think I know more about Jakarta and also from the perspective from the residents. So I think it's really nice, and also I like the sessions about. So we have invited publishers, librarians, and bookshops, and also get insights about these publishers in Jakarta. That's also very interesting and new to me. So yeah, I think it's really nice.
Do you think you will gain more benefit if you could have this offline? I mean, like you really come to Jakarta, or this is already quite helpful for you as an illustrator?
Yeah, if I have a chance to really stay in Jakarta, that's definitely I already feel the vibe of Jakarta from the videos, but I think if I'm in the city and working there, it will give me a much more different atmosphere and sense of the city. And also, I don't really have a final illustration about Jakarta for these projects. So if I have time, I really want to develop more about drawings and the lifestyle in Jakarta.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mas Hadi, you are already a published author and you have made a lot of wonderful stories before. So how can this residency help you more as a children book author? Kan sudah publish author ya, kan sudah bukan penulis baru gitu maksudnya. Jadi dapat apa lagi nih dari residensi yang kali ini gitu?
Yang membuat saya paling menarik itu saat mengikuti residensi ini adalah ketika ada narasumber tamu gitu kan, pembicara tamu yang sharing soal toko buku, terus perpustakaan, dan yang semacamnya gitu, para kreator buku anak. Dan yang paling menarik adalah ketika mengetahui bahwa di Norwich ada toko buku khusus jual buku anak-anak gitu, Book Dragonfly kalau nggak salah ya. Book lupa, I forgot the name. Nah, Dragon Tales. Gitu,
Book Bugs and Dragon Tales.
and Dragon Tales gitu kan. Nah, di situ adalah toko buku yang khusus menjual anak-anak dan tempatnya tuh desain interiornya tuh bagus. Terus koleksi buku-buku anaknya juga mantep, dan kayaknya di Jakarta kayaknya belum ada untuk toko buku offline seperti itu. Kita banyak toko buku anak tapi baru online, dan semoga ke depan di Jakarta punya toko buku seperti itu sih. Selain itu juga tentang koleksi di perpustakaan di Norwich, ada koleksi zine gitu, dan itu menarik buat saya karena di Jakarta perpustakaan hanya untuk buku tapi nggak pernah ada zine, dan di sana tuh ada. Semoga di sini juga ada kayak gitu sih, Mbak.
Okay, so it's not only about gaining knowledge on how to write children book, but also knowledge from sharing and talking from other book creators like librarians, like bookstores owners, and also the ecosystems, the book ecosystem in Norwich. Yeah, I wish we will have one offline bookstore like the one that you have mentioned before. What is it again? Book Bug and Dragon Tales, is that?
Book Bug
Book
and
Bugs and
Dragon
Dragon Tales.
Book Bug and Dragon Tales. That must be lovely. So and also the collection of zines. Okay, I wish that we had more collection of zines in our libraries. Now, Andina, how does this residency help you as a children's book illustrator? You've been joining a lot of programs, national and international. So how can this program help you more?
Okay, so I think I get more inspiration. I think just by observing the process of Amanda making the story and how Pai concepting and illustrating the project, I learned a lot about different approaches, and it's very inspiring. So and also I learned more interesting places in Norwich that inspire me to write something in the future. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to ask Amanda and actually this is for Amanda and Pai. I'm sorry, I wrote it wrongly. What's your opinion about the book ecosystem in Indonesia after sharing with the librarians and Hadi and also Andina and also some of the bookstores? How is it different from the book ecosystem in Norwich?
I think the thing that surprised me most was how the children's book market has a bigger share of the market to begin with than here. And the second thing is how non-fiction is a really big and important part of the market. We were looking at these sort of factual encyclopedia type books. There was one, a geography book we saw that parents will buy for kind of helping children with their schoolwork, which doesn't happen so much here. I think kids have got quite reliant on looking things up online rather than having the books as the stores. Whereas here, I think the fiction market is bigger. So I think that was quite a big surprise to me, that difference. I don't know what, as you.
Well, but to me, I'm happy to know the non-fiction book market is big because I'm a scientist and I'm also interested in like developing non-fiction books. But yeah, I think that's interesting to know the non-fiction fiction books. And also, I remember there are lots of words translated. So the original word is not Indonesian, but translated from other languages. And I think it's like completely different from the UK, because the UK usually have like local stories and words. But I think Indonesia is an amazing place, so I hope to see like more stories from Indonesia, like more illustrators and writers from like local residents.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're here at Having Books in Translation. There's a few really good publishers, things like Hsuan and Perini Press, but really not so much for children's books in translation. It doesn't happen so often, which I think is a shame. So maybe there's things we can learn.
Yes. In 2019, I went to Ireland for my residency program too as an author. And as I discussed with several publishers there, they admit that one of the disadvantages of being an English-speaking country is that you do not translate a lot from other countries, because you have your own, and usually it's your book that's being translated into other languages and things like that. Yeah, so let's hope we have more book translation from Indonesia in the future, in English, I mean. Now, Mas Hadi and Andina, is there any interesting program or creative activity that you've learned from the Norwich resident that you'd like to apply in Jakarta, other than zines and the book and the cute bookstores?
Especially the children bookstore. For me, I discovered that there's a puppet theater in Norwich. I really like that. More parks. I also learned that. Jakarta people also likes to take a picnic in the park. I do some, in the name of research, I go to the park. The other day, I once said to Amanda and Pai, I don't think people in Jakarta likes to have a picnic. Oh, they do. They do like it's full packed with people in the park. It's late in the afternoon, so the weather is getting cooler. That's when so I discovered something about my city also. For me, I also like the Dragon Hall. Beside the name Dragon Hall, but it's a residential place for writers, for creative. That's me.
Oke, yang saya ingin ada gitu di Jakarta setelah mengikuti residensi bersama Norwich itu ya udah jelas toko buku anak offline, terus lebih banyak lagi taman hijau seperti yang ada di kota Norwich, terus lebih sering lagi festival-festival kota di jalan-jalan untuk setiap tahun gitu, entah sekali dalam setahun atau enggak setengah 6 bulan sekali, nggak tahu gitu. Tapi kan di Norwich saya tahu ada banyak festival di sana, dan di Jakarta kayak belum banyak banget festival kayak gitu. PRJ yang turun-turun ke jalan kayak gitu sih.
Festival buku maksudnya?
Enggak, festival rakyat, festival kesenian aja kayak gitu.
Oke.
Iya, di sana banyak dan
art festives ya. Yeah, I hope that our leader will hear our our opinion. And so Amanda and Pai, you have the updated research from Andina today that people of Jakarta do like picnics. Yeah. So please be informed on that. And yeah, how do you wish that there are more festive, like art festive or book festivals in Jakarta, and there would be more parks? I think we have carnivals, parade, like a parade. Okay. But we do have, Jakarta has some free libraries in the parks too, right? Is it book hives? Where people can take whatever book they want and then leave another book in exchange. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
I can see from your face that you never been to one before.
I've been to that place. It's Marta Tiahu Park. I think the last time I've read an article somewhere, someone stole the book hive. No. Okay. Yeah, I know. Thank you. No.
That's such a shame. Yeah, someone stole them. Okay, we're coming closer to the end of the question and answer. I'd like to challenge Amanda and Pai to describe Jakarta in 3 words. If you are able to describe 3 interesting words about Jakarta, you will be somebody would pay for your flight to Jakarta, perhaps.
I think I have more general ideas. I think Jakarta to me is the diversity and vibrance and also stories. Well, I think these 3 words is also kind of linking together. Yeah, so I can see like much different from Norwich. So Jakarta is like very, very big mega city and it's a metropolitan. So you have very like modern things, skyscrapers, but also like historic heritage sites and also lots of plants. So all these good things combined together, which is amazing.
Okay,
Yeah.
what about them?
To think of, I thought of 3 words, which were petite, melting pot, and street food. And then I started to think actually that they are the things that we've kind of played around with in the story. I knew about petite before the residency, but what I didn't know was about on Fridays, how in government jobs, like people have dressed in petite. Like here, we have a dress down Friday when people come in jeans and t-shirts. So we do something different. But I also thought the street food. I remember when I think Andina was asking, saying, is it really true that you can't go and buy street food like in the evening or at 2 in the morning and not I know everything's shut. So it made me think about that it's this 24-hour thing and you can just go and buy food everywhere. And we were thinking lots about food with the picnic anyhow. So but similarities and differences.
I think street food is the most incredible word to describe Jakarta. When I see your illustration, Pai, I would have thought that you draw it from your boarding room somewhere in the middle of Jakarta. That is like your view from your bedroom window. It's just so Jakarta. Congratulations on that.
It's from the amazing walk around videos. I'm happy we have
Okay.
upload their like walk around videos there.
That's a good job.
There and really buy foods and I can really eat them.
Now, Mas Hadi and Andina, what interesting things about Norwich that might inspire you to write a children's story? And please remember that this is recorded. I'm going to demand for that story you promised to us this afternoon.
So, well, my take on what's interesting about Norwich is the first one is the whimsical vibes. It's very whimsical with the castles and the churches and the parks. You have a lot of parks, and the Norwich Cathedral Hawk, the camera where they streaming the hawk. I really like that. Like I think I can get a story from that. And definitely the puppet theater. Yes, that's me. Thank you.
Ya kalau menurut saya Norwich itu menarik karena dia adalah perpaduan antara masa lalu dan masa sekarang kayak gitu. Kota itu sangat menghargai masa-masa lalu, itu terlihat dari bangunan-bangunannya yang masih bagus, terus ada kastil, terus juga menerima sesuatu hal yang baru gitu kan. Contohnya kastil-kastil tua tapi bisa berubah menjadi skatepark, terus gereja, katedral tua, terus bisa berubah menjadi pub gitu kan. Itu jadi antara dua hal yang mungkin saling bertentangan tapi bisa menyatu, itu menurut saya suatu harmoni gitu, suatu keindahan, dan kayaknya saya bisa mendapatkan inspirasi dari hal-hal tersebut gitu sih.
So Hadi is mostly Hadi is mostly impressed by how Norwich merged together the past and the present. For example, like turning the old castle into a skateboard park. Did you say skateboard park? Yeah. I bet you want to go there and try to skateboard there. Okay, so I think we have reached the end of the question and answer. I'd like to sum up a few things before we end this conversation. Yeah. So once again, we'd like to thank the National Center of Writing and British Council for helping this first virtual residency. And of course, also to Jakarta City of Literature and Norwich City of Literature. So I can conclude from Amanda, Pai, Hadi, and also Andina that even though this residency was held virtually, but you can still learn a lot about your fellow authors, about the ecosystem, the book ecosystem in their country, about how their cities are doing a lot of art activities like such as parade, and also about bookstores, and also about libraries, and the similarities and difference between two cities. And also perhaps from my experience too, from my personal experience too, residency help you to not only to gain knowledge about writing itself, but also expanding your network and to get to know more people, and then get to just know a lot of things, a lot of new things. And I do wish that Amanda and Pai would visit us here in Indonesia. And it would be lovely to have you both here. And I bet Hadi and Andina would also love to visit the park. Yeah, visit the park and have a real picnic on the rainbow patchwork there with both of you.
Mantap.
Very hot park, but still a park. Very hot.
Still park, yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us today, this afternoon in Jakarta and this morning in Norwich. Thank you, Amanda, Pai, Mas Hadi, and Andina. It's lovely to talk to you all. So I'll see you again in another program. Bye, everyone.
Bye.